Welcome back to Behind the Pages, everybody. How you doing? Exactly. This is what we're going to talk about today. We're actually going to have a great time. We're actually going to be talking about other authors and how they uh, get into how they edit their videos and the top 10 things that they do that other authors don't think about. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So stay tuned. I hope you enjoy, and let's get into it. All right, here we go.
The first 10 pages are the most important pages in your entire novel, but chances are your opening is broken. When I worked at a top literary agency and at an imprint of Penguin Random House, it was my job to evaluate manuscripts we were considering. And those first 10 pages often meant the difference between a book we decided to publish and one that we rejected. You must grab your reader's attention in those first 10 pages, or they'll move on to something else and
Exactly. The first 10 pages, exactly what I was talking about before. If you ever watched these videos, on some of the other videos that I did, it's exactly what I said. The very first few pages are key to capture the reader's attention.
never give your book a second thought. It's tough, but true. So today I'm revealing the 9 most common mistakes that kill manuscripts in those critical first 10 pages and showing you exactly how to fix them. Make sure you stick all the way to the end because the last tip is something I see in 9 out of 10 manuscripts that I edit. But let's start with an easy fix. The first mistake you're probably making in your first pages is spotlighting inconsequential characters. Unless you have a really, really good reason otherwise, the first 10 pages of your manuscript should focus on your protagonist. After all, at this early point in the story, your reader is looking for guidance on who the story is actually about. I recently edited a novel where the first scene showed the protagonist landing at JFK Airport and then getting into a taxi. The author spent several paragraphs detailing the taxi driver's appearance, and then we got 2 pages of dialogue between the protagonist and the taxi driver, where the driver revealed some of their tragic backstory. So as I read through the rest of
Exactly. If you guys ever pay attention to my other videos, one of the things I actually said was if you have a character, this is like one of my first videos I did. If you got a character that doesn't have great, you have dialogue, like for instance, this taxi driver. You have dialogue with this taxi driver. For me, I use like some sort of like bar wench or something like that, just some baker chick or or whatever the case may be. But um sorry, I fixed my lighting. It's sitting there blinking all over. It's getting annoying. Uh but basically, yeah. So you can sit there and have a character and you're gonna sit there and like talk about the taxi driver, talk about getting into this, talk about getting into that, and just really emphasizing that taxi driver. But later on in the actual story, the taxi driver has no major input. So why did you put all of this emphasis on this specific character when they have no uh they're not going to be in the rest of the story. So unless you're going to bring him back, leave him out.
the novel, in the back of my head, I was thinking, when is that taxi driver going to reappear?
Yeah.
What is that backstory going to add up to?
See,
And guess what? That character never reappeared
it
at
never
all.
does.
Ultimately, all of the attention we gave that taxi driver in that first scene was irrelevant. It made me question why we spent so much attention on him in the first scene to begin
You
with.
just wasted all
So,
your
in your
time
opening
writing.
pages, make sure you don't accidentally overinflate minor characters who aren't that consequential to the story. This is the most important real estate in your entire book. So focus only on the characters who matter. Anytime you introduce a character in the first 10 pages, ask yourself these 3 questions. Is this character essential to the protagonist's journey? Will they appear again in a meaningful way? Do they contribute to the plot conflict? If the answer is no to all of these questions, then don't spend much time on them at all. And you probably don't even need to give them a name.
My suggestion here is to come up with 5 characters that you really, really enjoy, that you really, really like before you even start writing the book. When you get the idea of the book, when you get the idea of what you're going to be writing about, you need to have at least five good, strong characters. Give them personality in your notes. Give them a reason, who they interact with, things like that, so that when you do start writing, these characters will be in the book the entire time. and they mean something. Everything else, don't spend time on. These are the main ones. Unless you're going to bring them back in as you're writing, because sometimes that happens, don't put too much emphasis.
Because anytime you name a character, you're telling the reader that they matter and that's someone the reader should remember.
Exactly.
I'm not saying you can't have background characters, of course, but don't give them so much attention that we mistake them for a main character. That's only going to set up improper expectations, confuse your reader, and overcrowd the narrative. This second mistake is one of the most brutal habits for newer authors to break. It's delivering too much backstory.
Oh,
I
yeah,
bet
that's
you
crazy.
know your protagonist's life story as well as your own. Their childhood traumas, their biggest regrets, their secret talent for flipping pancakes with their eyes closed. And it makes sense that you want to share all of that with readers so that we come to understand them. But here's the problem with backstory. Readers won't care about your character's past until they're invested in their present. Think about how Breaking Bad begins. We don't get a whole history of Walter White's failed career dreams or his bad health insurance. We get a man in his underwear driving an RV in the desert. Immediate action and immediate tension. And we immediately want to learn more about him. So in your first 10 pages, treat backstory as seasoning, not the meal itself.
And that's exactly what I did in my book, Damien's Blood Moon. I gave a little bit of emphasis on some things, but then you don't really get to know him until later on in the book when you really start to get to know him. Because that's exactly what she said. You don't want to put all of this backstory and all this stuff. Then finally, when you start reading the book, it doesn't really matter. You want to build the character up, yes, you do, but you want to build them up in the present and then go back in the past a little bit, just like she said in Breaking Bad. That's a good point.
It should be sprinkled on only as much as is needed.
Good
If you
feedback.
find yourself writing pages of flashbacks or explaining your protagonist's personal history at length, stop and ask yourself, what backstory does the reader actually need to follow what's going on in the scene? If the backstory isn't absolutely essential for us to know right now, save it for later. Because
Exactly, like in my book, Damien's Blood Moon. Basically, what I did, because my story starts off with this kid. He's in his house. You can smell the woods, things like that. Just a little bit of detail, but it has enough to get you interested. But the whole point to my book is that he's 16 years old and he doesn't know that he's going to be a werewolf, and not to mention he's going to be like a leader of a werewolf clan. So you kind of got to give a little bit of detail in there to show that he's just a normal kid, but not enough to like make it so freaking boring that you want to put the book down. And then later on, it goes more into his backstory, because you got to have an origin story. You do on some of these characters, but like in Spider-Man, it doesn't really show a whole lot. Yes, it talks about Peter, how he's a dork and things like that. And then all of a sudden it goes on how he's bitten by a spider, and then it goes further. And then later on, it goes further more into his past. You see where I'm going with this?
as long as you do a good job hooking us into the story with the action of the scene, we won't mind waiting a bit to learn more about the character's past. But how do you ensure your opening scene is engaging enough? Let's tackle that with the next mistake, which is burying the action. What actually happens in your opening scene? Many writers fall into the trap of spending their critical opening 10 pages on extensive setting description or exposition. But if the protagonist doesn't actually do anything, the pace will feel slow. I see it all the time
Hate
in
books like
manuscripts
that.
I'm editing. The opening 10 pages feel more like a warm-up lap rather than the start of the race. And by the end of the first 10 pages, we have no idea where the plot is going.
Mine starts off
In
like
these
it
cases,
gets
your
going like
reader
in the
is likely
first
going
few
to stop reading before the story
a paragraph.
really even begins. Imagine if the Hunger
get hooked
Games
right
started
there.
like this. Katniss wakes up, brushes her teeth, pets Buttercup, eats her breakfast, and reflects on her relationship with Prim. We watch her entire morning routine with no mention of the reaping and no plot development. Is that an opening that would make you keep reading? Probably not. If you have some kind of morning routine opening like this, I'm not here to attack you.
No.
But I recommend revisiting it. The opening
Yeah.
scene, rather, should show your protagonist discovering something consequential, navigating a conflict, or working toward a goal. This next mistake involves solves one of the most debated elements of fiction writing, prologues. Love them or hate them, I think that starting the novel with a lengthy prologue, I mean more than 10 pages, is a risky choice.
Kind of is.
And often does more harm than good. I promise, I'm not actually against prologues altogether, so don't come after me if you have one. But you need to be careful and ensure that your story actually calls for a prologue, because many books that have prologues don't need them. If you're really using your prologue to dump a lot of world building or historical background on your reader, you should probably cut it entirely. That information should instead be woven into the action of the story itself. Another bad use of a prologue is to show a cryptic scene that is impossible for the reader to understand. That's likely just going to confuse them. So when can prologues work? The most effective prologues either tease an event that comes later on in the story, often at the climax, to make us eager to see how we end up at that conflict. Or they flash back in time to some period before the beginning of the novel that contains some important context. But here's the key. Keep your prologue short and sweet. It shouldn't take up your full first 10 pages, because then you're delaying the reader's arrival at the main narrative and likely delaying our introduction to the protagonist. And if you're querying literary agents, many of them ask for the first 10 pages, so if that's all prologue and nothing else, you're not really giving them a taste of what the story is all about. This next mistake is probably the most deadly of them all. It's confusing the reader. Here's something most newer authors don't understand. A reader who's confused isn't more intrigued to keep reading to figure out what everything's about. They're frustrated and likely going to put the book down. Writers are sometimes intentionally vague, cryptic, or mysterious to make readers want to learn more. But what they're often doing instead is just disorienting the reader and making it difficult.
Exactly. So, like I talked about before in one of my last videos, look at it like this. Yes, you're the artist, you're writing the book, this is your heart being put on pages. But take a few steps back, look at what you're writing, and be like, if I didn't write this book, would I like this? If I was just a first time reader, would I like this? Because at the end of the day, it's a business. This is a product. You want to make your product perfect as best as it can be so that everybody likes it. And you also got to remember, not everybody's going to like it, but you want to get the majority out there. You're going to have some haters. Don't get me wrong. They exist. Don't get your feelings hurt. Don't wear your heart on a sleeve. It's a business at the end of the day.
To follow what's going on. In the opening pages, we need to know who the protagonist is, where we are, and what's going on. Full stop. The reader should be able to understand these foundational facts without reading the description of your book. And if they can't, then you're likely confusing them. Here's the mindset shift I want you to make. Suspense doesn't come from intentionally withholding essential information from the reader, but giving them enough information to make them intrigued to know what happens next.
Yeah.
The Martian is a great example of an intriguing yet clear opening. We know exactly who the protagonist is, Mark Watney, an astronaut, where he is, abandoned on Mars, and what's going on. He's been separated from his crew. We're briefed on all the basics, yet we're intrigued to learn how he got into this position and what will happen from here. The other critical element that The Martian's opening has in spades is conflict, which brings me to my next mistake, which is not introducing enough conflict. Without conflict, you don't have a story. You have a series of scenes that doesn't add up to anything. Conflict is what gives the story shape and creates an emotional reading experience, because we naturally want to see how the characters navigate that conflict and eventually resolve it. Conflict is so crucial to effective storytelling that we need to see it in the very first pages of your novel.
Conflict
Because without it, you won't give the reader any reason to continue reading. That doesn't mean that every story has to have a major war or a gruesome murder.
It's like fishing. Throw a line out there, reel it back in. Tease the audience, tease the reader. Throw the line out, reel it back in. Throw the line out, reel it back in. Until finally, you throw the last line out, then you frickin' pull the line back and you hook them. That's kind of what it's like. Think of it like fishing.
Conflict can be more subtle and intimate in nature, like an argument between family members or even a protagonist's own self-doubt.
Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video as much as I did. It's exactly what she said. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. Just make sure you follow those steps. I hope you like and subscribe. Definitely like and subscribe. So I'll see you again. Stay tuned the next time.